Um, I'm so glad to be here with all of you today, and nothing actually makes me happier than to end my day with a group of educators. And so it is so wonderful, Arlen, for us to come together as a group and to talk about this really important topic of social media and how it's impacting students' health, happiness, and future success. And as Arlen said, I am with the Social Institute, and but I am no stranger to education. So, a quick story: I actually have over 20 years of experience in K-12 schools. I've been an elementary school principal and a K-8 curriculum director, and I had this moment one time whenever I was whenever I was a elementary school principal, and some of my fourth graders came up to me and they were like, "Mrs. Jenkins, this happened on house party," and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what house party is. And so in my sort of panic, I told the girls, I was like, you shouldn't be on that. Just go back to class and focus on math. And in that moment, I realized, oh man, they were looking to connect with me. They were looking for me to help them. They were really reaching out to me as somebody who can help support them in this social situation that they were in. And I sent them away. And so whenever I found the Social Institute, I really was drawn to this positive, proactive approach of how do you help students navigate these experiences that are very natural in their life. And so you can see here that I come to this conversation with my 20 years of school experience, and helping educators all across the country navigate some of the situations that I also experienced as both a teacher and a school leader. And I also am a pro tech educator. And why that is important is because I am not a digital native. I actually remember getting my first laptop. I remember starting my first social media account with my son, who is now a high school senior, sitting on my lap. And whenever he was about 3 years old, I think. And so I have seen how social media and technology have been disruptive to education in both positive and ways that are also concerning. And so I've also been somebody who has had to navigate that. So know that whenever I come to this conversation, I'm doing it through the lens of former educator, administrator, and also a parent, because I know that, man, we cannot remove parents from this conversation. And so it's so great to talk with all of you about this topic. And so what we're going to focus on today is ways that educators can guide this students through these social situations that students face every day, and helping to represent their core values, whatever they share, both online and off. And also helping students find positive role models and mentors that align with their own interests and goals. And so it's one of the things that we talk about quite a bit is, who are you surrounding yourself with? Who is it that is really in your feeds, and are you connecting with every day, both in your personal life and in your virtual life as well? And then also, we're going to give you some expert tips that we have discovered over our years of working with schools and educators across the country on how educators can teach students to enhance their online presence and proactively be more prepared for modern day life skills and what they need for life beyond high school. So with that, I want to quickly introduce you to, this is our founder and CEO, Laura Tierney, and we like to have a lot of fun. And so this is something that it comes directly from one of our lessons, and it's called the concentration challenge. And so I like to run this with educators because sometimes there's this question of, why do we focus on things that maybe aren't directly connected to a test score? Maybe not directly connected to an academic content area. And what we've come to know is that if students' heads aren't in the right space, then they can't possibly learn. No matter what math lesson I had prepared, if the kid was upset about something going on in their social world, that math lesson didn't mean anything. And so we have this concentration challenge, which our founder and CEO, Laura Tierney, is going to walk you through here in just a second, that really frames why this work is so important and why we choose to talk about this with these different topics with students. And so go ahead and you'll participate in this challenge, and I want you to have that chat box ready because I'm going to ask you in a minute to put your score in here. So let's go ahead and get this going.
Hi, I'm Laura Tierney, founder and CEO at the Social Institute. Now, the topics that were just on the screen are just a few examples of what you're going to be discussing as your class navigates Win at Social this year. And I want to dive in a little bit deeper into one of those topics, striking a balance. And I wanted to run with you a quick exercise that I ran when I was 16 years old. For a little bit of background, I was a student athlete growing up. I played with Duke and Team USA. And with the US team, we were training out in California one year, and our head coach put this same exercise in front of all of us. Here's how it works. It's called the concentration challenge. And you're gonna have a 10 by 10 grid in front of you with numbers ranging from 1 to 100. Your job is to try and count to the highest number possible, starting at the number 1. So see number 1, 3 rows from the bottom. Then you have to find the number 2, then 3, then 4, then so on. But here's the challenge. I'm going to be playing the role of technology, doing my best to distract you as you're trying to get to the highest number possible. And you're going to have 60 seconds. Now, before we dive in, think to yourself, what number do you want to try and count to within 60 seconds? Got it? All right, let's go ahead and get the new grid up on the screen. All right, ready, set, go. All right, how'd everyone do? Pause this video right now and take 60 seconds to discuss as a class who got the highest.
Okay, so how did you do? Oh, good. I see the chat blowing up here. Would love to see how everybody did. Yeah. If you're hitting in between that 10 to 20 range, that's pretty typical of where people fall. Yes, I see that 12. It's tough. It's tough. And so as part of this concentration challenge, we have students go through this. This is one of our actual orientation lessons that we do with all students. And we go on to having them do that challenge again, where we are actually removing distractions, and we talk about focus mode and how focus mode can help them to and how it can really impact their ability to concentrate and really focus on what's important. And so the reason that we do this and we take such a different approach is because students have heard a whole lot of messages about social media and technology. And most of the time, whenever they talk to adults, they're focusing on the first part of that concentration challenge. The adults are of like, oh man, it's so distracting, and it's just really going to be a losing proposition. So the most of the time we whenever students talk to adults about it, they're talking about it in a way that is focusing on the negatives, about it tarnishing their reputation, hurting their well-being, focusing on losing internships, or they're only following negative influences. And what we know is that if I were a coach and coaching on a team, and I only told my players what not to do, then how would they know how to play the game? We really flip the script. We really say, you know what? We need an example of how to help students know what to do, to help them see that something that is part of their everyday life, social media, technology, that can really be a winning proposition for them. And so they can use those tools to, yes, can tarnish their reputation, and it can also strengthen their reputation. It can help to cultivate self-esteem, land great internships. It can really be used to impress college admissions officers. I've got to say, it is having a high school senior, it's really been eye-opening how social media is used in the college process, everything from finding a roommate to touring campuses to doing all kinds of engagement pieces with the schools. And so helping students understand that it's a piece of their life, but it doesn't have to be a losing proposition. And students do see that. When we ask a lot of students a lot of questions through our gamified platform called Win at Social. But one of the things that we have come to learn over time is that students realize that they understand there are negative effects for using social media and technology, but there's also a lot of positives. And so you can see here on the screen, this is from a research done by Pew Research Study. Um, and you can see some of them that teens have identified as some of the top negative effects on their mental health and well-being, and then but also some of the top positive effects. And so one of the things that we challenge adults to do is to think about, are you only staying in this losing narrative? Is the conversation that you're having with your students going over to that positive, flipping it to ways that they can really use tech for good? And so like you may have seen, we really enjoy trivia and games, and we enjoy maximum engagement through not only our Win It Social platform, but also engaging educators like you. And so I've got some trivia here for you. According to this Pew Research study that you just saw, social media made what percent of teens feel more connected with their friends? I've seen actually a lot of articles about this. So if you want to throw in the chat what your guess is, what do you think? I've got 70% here. A lot of people saying 70. Let's see. We're going to remove some answers so it's not 35. Not 17. Oh, all of you is 70 may be right. It's not 70. It's 81% of teens said that social media made them feel more connected with their friends. And if you look at like Seattle Public Schools, they have this the lawsuit out against Meta and Google and other social media giants, saying it's such a negative impact in impacting their mental health and well-being. And what we know is that students have pushed back on that and said, you know, they want to be part of that conversation. They want to talk about the ways that it is helping them as well. And so we actually believe very much in student voice. And so through our platform and through our work with students across the country, we actually gain a lot of insights into teen social worlds. This is your first download here, so get the cameras out. Arlen prepared you for this. This is our 23 Insights for 2023 report, brand new as of a couple weeks ago, where we have all of these insights are taken directly from what we have come to learn about students through Win It Social and through our interactions with schools every day. And so definitely recommend that you download this report, share it with others within your network, and really look to see, are these trends that surprise you? Are these trends that maybe that you're also seeing as well? And how does it align with what you know and are experiencing every day with students? All right, so how do we talk about social media for good and tech for good? It's certainly not something that feels natural to adults. Typically, they lean into the, oh my gosh, this feels foreign to me, especially for someone like me who was not a digital native. For somebody who had to learn this, I feel like sort of haphazardly as it developed. And so we actually have developed a common set of language around these different topics. And so you can see them here, and we call them our 7 social standards. Now, we're very intentional with calling them standards and not rules. And here's why. Whenever you have a rule, what is it the first thing that you think to do? You think to break it. How do I get around the rule? When you have a standard, what is it that you first think to do? How do I live up to this standard? And so we are very intentional with this language of calling them standards. And we develop lessons with students starting in 4th grade and going through 12th grade because we know that over the course of a child's social worlds from 4th to 12th grade, there's a lot of changes, and they have specific needs at each grade and stage that they're in. And so I'm really looking at these different topics from the different milestones that students are experiencing. And we know that it's really important to link these topics with both mental health and also what we modern day life skills. And so we design lessons using the understanding by design framework, but I think most importantly is that they are aligned to CASEL competencies. And so why that's important is when you're talking about these topics with students, it's important not to say, okay, we're just going to do a bunch of digital citizenship lessons, or we're just going to do some SEL lessons. Really, it's about modern day life skills. And so that's what our 7 social standards are about. So if you're looking for a way to connect with your students on these topics, it's really about building that common unifying language that you can use throughout whatever class that you're in and across your campuses. And so what I'm going to do today is we're actually going to walk through what a positive, proactive approach looks like for students with each one of these 7 social standards and what they mean to us and can mean to you. And so I love starting with this. It's probably one of my most favorite quotes of "you can't be what you can't see." And it's so true. Students every day are being told, again, what not to do, but they're also being told negative examples, right? Of, oh, did you see that this kid lost their scholarship? Or, really putting those cautionary tales out there when really what we will also want to highlight is who is doing this well, who are really the influencers that they can look up to. And I just said a key word that you're going to see here in just a minute. And so, you can't be what you can't see, and leaning into that student voice is really at the heart of all of our work at the Social Institute. We also a real game changer that for me as an educator, I was like, of course, we vet your lessons first in front of students. We actually co-create lessons with students because we know that their voice really matters. And if it's something that doesn't land well, if they're like, yeah, we really don't talk that way, then it really has to connect to them in order to be meaningful to them. And so making sure that anything that's created for students, especially whenever it talks about their social world, is co-created with them, that it really reflects their voice and their reality. So let's start with our standard play to your core. So this one is all about doing and posting things that represent your values and character. And one of the things that we challenge students to do is to strengthen their Google search results. Now, as a mother of a high school senior, I love this strategy, and it's actually one of the challenge projects that we have from one of our lessons. And it is about helping students build out their LinkedIn profile with the idea that whenever people do a Google search on you, one of the things that you want is all of your accomplishments to shine and to pop up. And so building out a LinkedIn profile is a great way to help students build out a social media presence that really speaks to their core and really reflects what it is that they want other people to see. And so we definitely recommend that you have students think about what is out there and do this quick Google search and see what pops up, and then how they can level up those search results through intentionally creating things like that LinkedIn profile that will help elevate them. And if you yourself are not familiar with LinkedIn, one of the things that we have actually developed are things called playbooks, and those are on different platforms and apps that people are using. And we use while they're mainly designed for the adults in students' worlds, The LinkedIn playbook actually is used by a lot of juniors and seniors in high school to help them learn tricks and tools to level up their LinkedIn profile as they're thinking about things like college and internships and first jobs and all of those things that they want to accomplish after high school. And so definitely recommend thinking about them playing to their core and what it is that they want to put out there for others to see that they're really proud of. With that, we also, to the counter of that, we have our standard called Handle the Pressure. And we know firsthand that students are facing a lot of pressure. And so this standard focuses on, how do you rise above the social pressures that you face every day? Whether it's, following the latest trends or getting the newest whatever, or having to have a certain look. Or style about you. And we know that students are facing tremendous pressure also to be perfect. We have seen, as I'm sure you have seen as well, that anxiety is off the charts, that more and more schools are really struggling with how to help students address mental health and their anxiety. And a lot of that comes from this pressure of needing to feel like they're either perfect or that they have no faults or failures. And so one of the activities that challenges that we have students think about is how do you, publish your failures? How do you think about those? And so there's a Princeton professor who actually publishes his resume of failures, and it's to normalize that we all have lowlights and imperfections in our lives. And it's not about always being perfect, but it's about learning from those opportunities that maybe are things that aren't the shiny and new, but I have found that specifically with students as they're looking at this next stage of life, having already thought through what is something that I've really had to overcome, what is something that I have faced that maybe I, really struggled with, or is I consider a low light, and how did I persevere beyond that, and how did I handle that situation? So definitely using this strategy to help students handle the pressure. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but to have them think about times that they failed and build that out in an intentional way of a resume of failures. And so to think about how they overcame it, and also how they can still be successful even though they have failures in their life. So probably one of our most popular standards is strike a balance, and it's one that I know the adults think about the most. They think about quite a bit. Is this idea of technology addiction and how they see students more and more glued to their devices. And so we talk about striking a balance a lot, and it's all about balancing your time and attention between technology and the people around you. And so one of the things that we do at every grade level, we talk about this in developmentally appropriate ways, but like for ninth grade, we talk about it in the terms of looking at your screen time stats and, first starting with what are your goals and interests? How much sleep do you need to be 100%? What are the things that you want to accomplish on a daily basis or a weekly basis? And then we coach students in how to get to their screen time, how to take a look at that. So it's not about the adult saying, oh, you shouldn't be on this app or you shouldn't be spending time on that. It's really about students being able to analyze, how is my screen time helping me or hindering me from reaching my goals and interests? How is it, what moves can I make? What apps can I maybe put a time limit on or mute? Or how can I better structure my time so that it's less mindless scrolling and more time doing something really productive or something that's going to enrich me? And so helping students walk through that process of analyzing their screen time stats is really powerful. We also have ways of teaching them, different settings and different tools that they can use within their devices on how to set different app limits and how to really stay in control of their screen time. There are so many things that may seem counterintuitive too, but there are so many tools within the device to help manage screen time. It's just about understanding them and leveraging those. All right, so another big one, and this one is really popular in the month of January. And I'll tell you why in just a second. But this is our standard protect your privacy like you're famous. And we actually organize our lessons by this national calendar that follows national trends. So, like in October, we're talking about cyberbacking, which I'll talk about in just a second, but it goes with Cyberbullying Prevention Month or Bullying Prevention Month. And if in January, we focus on protecting your privacy like you're famous, because what happens in December, a lot of students get new devices. They have more time downtime away from school. They're spending more time on devices. They're getting new apps, new gaming consoles. They're engaging in different ways, possibly with friends. And so really teaching students some of the moves that they can make to stay in control of their personal information. So here is another download for you. Definitely check this out. This is our privacy challenge. And we encourage educators to do this in the class with students, with parents to do this at home with their kids. I will say everything we do here, we also provide for families to do at home. And so it's a great connection point of taking everything students learn in school and all of these strategies and resources, and also putting them into a way that you can continue that conversation outside of school. But this privacy challenge has you analyze different different settings that you have on your phone, and different ways to think about privacy on your devices in your virtual world. And so it is a great thing for a shared experience for educators to do with their students, and for students to do as well. And it's eye-opening. And again, it's not about lecturing. Students want to connect with the adults in their world. They just don't want the lecture that goes along with it. And so this is a way to have a conversation with students about ways that they think about privacy, and what information they feel that they are okay sharing, and what settings they really want to have on different platforms and apps. So I definitely recommend that you take a look at this privacy challenge and run this with your students. Okay, so I talked about cyberback, which sounds like a funny term. It is the opposite of cyberbullying, and it's a phrase that was coined by a student, and it means, how do you have each other's backs online and off? And so cyberbacking is really about, how do you stand up for each other? If you see something happening in maybe it's a group text, group chat. Maybe it is on a social platform. Maybe it is through a game that you're playing with friends, but maybe there's other people in there that aren't people that you know. And so, and maybe in some things that you're experiencing that, like, that's not really kind, and that is something that I'm not okay with. And so how do you stand up for each other in both online and off? And so we call that cyber backing. And we actually take a real-time approach to lessons. So one thing that we've heard from many educators, and I saw this myself as a teacher, as some of the lessons that were really great 10 years ago are not so great 10 years now, right? So because things change so rapidly in students' online worlds. And so it's really about, how do you stay current and fresh and up to date? And so one of the things that we do, and approaches that we take, is that we have we call them live lessons, but really they're trending events, lessons, things that talk about what students are experiencing in the moment. Maybe they're hearing about it on their TikTok feeds. Maybe that's something that's a big topic of conversation among their friend group. And we actually have lessons that center around those topics. A big one here that we had in October for cyberbacking is around Halloween costumes. We know that a lot of students, they spend a lot of money actually on Halloween costumes for the purpose of social media presence and the different photo ops that come with it. And so one of the things that we've had to talk about is, how what is your costume like? Is it something that really aligns with your values and your character? And so one of our live lessons actually takes this idea of cyberbacking and has students think about before they're ever in that situation and saying, am I doing something just because I think this is cool or going to be trendy, or is it something that really may upset some people and really be offensive and hurtful? And having students look at what their costume is going to be. So a real story is after this lesson, one of our middle school families actually emailed and said, "Hey, my kid came home from school and was really actually excited to change their costume because they were thinking about how it maybe didn't align with what they wanted to represent, and they hadn't thought about it before. And so when they thought about it and they thought about that it may have been really culturally insensitive to some people, it really helped them to see it in a different way, that that wasn't who they wanted to put out there. And so thinking about even things like Halloween costumes is a way to connect with what the students are talking about in real time and in their everyday lives, and how that translates into their social world. Okay, and so I mentioned the word influencers earlier, and yes, all of you are influencers. It's not just role models, and it's not it's mentors as well. But we're all influencers on students, right? It's the voices that they surround themselves with, and so we call that find your influencers. And thinking about, are you surrounding yourself with positive role models, people who will help you reach your goals, who will help you reach your interests? What are the voices that you're listening to often? And so one of the challenges that we put into one of our lessons is having students just analyze, where are they getting their news sources? And what is it that they're understanding in their whether it's their social feeds or their friend feed or their friend groups, or what is it that the voices that they're hearing? And so we actually encourage students to in schools to look at this media bias chart. You can actually Google interactive media bias chart, and it will take you to this, and it's something that we use in our lessons to make sure that we really are connecting with students that maybe come from all different backgrounds, all different beliefs. And so and we encourage students to think about that too. We encourage schools to think about that and use this media bias chart as a way of analyzing, where is it that you're getting your news? We take this and we look at it and through the lens of our live lesson as well. We did one last year on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, where we talked about misinformation versus disinformation, and just the subtle difference of that language between those two terms. And so wanting to see where students are getting their information, and what are their go-to sources for that. As you can imagine, YouTube and TikTok are actually primary sources for students to go and get their information. Those are major resources for them. And so, talking to them about, how do you discern between the different types of information that you get, and what do you discern as misinformation or disinformation? And so definitely encourage you to check out this media bias chart. It is something a lot of schools have found helpful. We find this very helpful on our team as well. And then, use your mic for good. So we talk about things that happen in the world. Well, as we all know, Queen Elizabeth passed. And we heard from several of our schools, our partner schools, that they were saying one of the most common Google searches that they were finding popping up on their filters among middle schoolers was, who was Queen Elizabeth? They didn't know. And yet they were hearing all about her in their different aspects of life, whether it was on social media, whether it was from their parents or at home. And so teachers were like, how, we just assumed everyone knew who Queen Elizabeth was. And so having a way to talk to students about really impactful and historically significant things that happen in the world, but doing it in a developmentally appropriate way and doing it in a way that really matters to them. So the way that we address this topic of Queen Elizabeth's passing is taking a look at how technology has changed over time throughout her reign. And so, and how she was really a trailblazer in this area and embraced new technologies whenever there was a lot of pressure, maybe not to. And man, you want to talk about an unknown and how much she saw change over the course of her life. But taking these topics of technology and how TV and the internet and social media platforms, all of those really have changed how she interacted and engaged with other people, with the public. And so looking at that over her life and having students better understand who she was and why this was a historically relevant event, but also doing it in a way that they connected with and they see as important as well. And so I actually want to throw you, before I move on here, I have a quick poll. I actually want to see, let me go ahead and just move this real quick. Okay, so I have a quick question for you. With this, it's more trivia. How many hours each day do you think students spend with entertainment screen media? Ages 13 to 18. Let's see what we've got. We've got 6 hours, 8.3 hours, 9.5 hours, 5 hours. All right. All right. We'll give you another minute to vote here. Okay. And this actually comes from Common Sense Media as the source on this one. And it actually is 8.3 hours each day spent for entertainment purposes. And so why this is really important and relevant is that we know that students are spending a lot of time online, but they're also doing it, they're doing this for entertainment purposes, but they're also doing it for educational purposes. And so somebody like me, who is a pro tech educator and definitely saw the need for tech education in schools, you really are thinking about how are students spending their time online. And so are they doing it in a way that is thinking about like almost like a pyramid, right? A screen time pyramid. Is it in a way that's really creative and utilizing skills that that are going to be impactful to them, or is it just mindless scrolling and just for consumption? And so we have, let's go ahead and share the results. Congratulations to all of you who said 8.3 hours. And yes, if you said 9.5 hours, you're not alone. That was another very popular answer, and so is 6. But 8.3 hours of screen time for entertainment. And so one of the things that we know as ineffective practices, and this is where I want you to think about your own school, and maybe if you could throw in the chat, what is one of the ineffective practices that you have seen in education? And got this popping up here. What is one of the ineffective practices that you've seen? And so if you want to throw that in the chat, I know that personally, I saw the lecture, adults lecture at students was something that I saw, and I will have to say that I did myself as an educator and as a principal, lecturing. Yep, I can see. Thank you, Deborah, for that. But definitely the one and done efforts too is another big one, and we get that question a lot of like, do you come and speak to students, or the way that we're going to tackle these topics is bringing in somebody to really warn all the kids of all the harm that social media and technology can do to them. And well, certainly there is a time and a place for students to understand that, as we know from that earlier study that we saw, that students are aware that there are negative effects, but they're also aware that it's here. This is a natural part of their life. And so what are some of the positive ways that it's being used as well? And so we definitely see this as not just something where you bring someone in just to talk at the kids or just to talk at the parents, or that you design things that are created by adults, just to, I consider it like Charlie Brown teacher, right? Just to talk at the kids. And really you're in actually involving them in the co-creation of this material. You're actually leaning into student voice, asking about their opinions and their real life situations and the scenarios that they face. And so we do that through a variety of polling questions, but also huddle questions. And really, it's about, I challenge you to think about this. When you're talking to students about these topics, what time is spent on teacher voice and what time is spent on student voice? How much time and space are you giving to students to talk about these different topics that are relevant? And so when we talk about those, what the topics might be, we're thinking back to these 7 social standards. What is it that you're doing to, what are some strategies that you can take to help balance your screen time? What are some of the situations that you see whenever students may be unkind, and what's your go-to move? And questions like that are open-ended questions that can really help students think about different strategies that they can take, that that they can have in their tool belt, really, to help them whenever they're faced with certain situations. Have them even think about their privacy settings. Even something as simple like one of our, I think it's either fifth or sixth grade lesson, has students think about their passwords and the strength of their passwords and keeping something like that private. So thinking about these topics from a developmentally appropriate way, but also asking students what matters to them and the way that they feel and talk about these topics is important. Um, and so we are all about taking this more effective approach. We've seen a lot of schools try this ineffective column. I myself have done this and spent a lot of time living in what I call whack-a-mole. And it's where an issue pops up and you deal with it, and then a week later you get another screenshot or email from a parent or a situation that's happened in among your students or in class, and you feel like you're right back where you started. And so really it's about how can you take a more proactive approach, leaning into the realities that students are facing and doing it in a way that connects with them and makes them puts them as part of the conversation. So if you're wondering how can schools do this? Like, what are some of the next things that they can do? And what is the school's role in helping students support their student well-being? We definitely recommend downloading our playbook. We've got some strategies here. Our 7 social standards are here in this playbook, so you'll have those as well. We also take a look at the different roles within a school that school leaders, educators, school personnel can take in helping to support student well-being within on your campuses. And so I definitely recommend that you do this, download this playbook here. It's very incredibly helpful as you're thinking about, what are some ways that you can help to support student well-being. And then I have another polling question for you, because I want to know, after you're seeing, hearing about all this, what are some of the different things that you personally are seeing students facing? We've talked about anxiety and depression. We've talked about cyberbullying, that pressure for perfection and the need to be perfect. So if you want to go ahead and just vote here, what are some of the things that are impacting your students? And we know that um, for educators, never say none of these, because if you've got students on your campus, then they are experiencing these real life modern day challenges that a lot of adults are facing as well. And so wanting to know what's important to all of you that you see your students facing. So we see not enough sleep is definitely one, lack of motivation for sure. For lack of motivation, we have found that asking these open-ended questions is really, really helpful in pulling students into the conversation. It gets them more excited and it helps them understand that their voice does matter. And then also engaging them with those timely topics, those looking at what's happening in the world around them and asking them, to talk about that and do so in a way that is really open-ended but values their voice and perspective is really important. And it's a way to help engage them and help make them more interested in building relationships with the adults in their world. Anxiety and depression, yes, it's definitely one that we see as a major issue as well. And so thank you for chiming in on this poll. It's helpful to know what, and I'll share these results with all of you so you can see how your peers here have responded to this. And we are always interested in connecting with you. And so I would love to hear what you think. If this is something that you feel like, gosh, this has really been a different way to think about these topics that we're talking about every single day at our school and on our teams. And we're always struggling with how to help students navigate these different challenges and these different topics. Would love to hear from you and your team. And if you're interested in learning more about our really positive and proactive approach, let us know that as well. And so I do see here in the Q&A, okay, it looks like you answered for that follow-up challenge. It looks like we've got a little bit of time here, Arlen. As I told you, I very much value the time of educators, and so want to make sure that they have time to ask any questions that I'm happy to answer or get a couple minutes back in their day.
Absolutely. Andrea, thank you so much for this presentation.
Sure.
Extremely informative. Very much appreciate that. Make sure to take a moment, scan that QR code, and fill out the post-session survey. We've got plenty of time for questions, so if you've got an idea or a question or a comment, feel free to type it into the webinar chat. If you just want to say thank you to Andrea in the presentation, feel free to type that in. As I mentioned in the beginning, if you'd like to share something out verbally, just raise your hand with your toolbar at the bottom of your screen. I will see it pop up in my participants panel, and you can unmute your microphone that way. And we'll be silent here for a little bit as we wait for people to type in their questions or raise their hand.
All right.
I'm seeing a lot of thanks. Thanks for the ideas and new perspective. That's
Of course.
very much appreciated. Thank you all for doing that.
Of course. I told you it's the best way to end my day here is to chat with educators about something that I've seen and I've experienced, and something that I'm really excited about too. Thanks, Melissa. Excellent. Love it when you have some takeaway thoughts. And if you, Arlen, I'll include the different downloads that we had up that I had up on the screen with the QR codes. I'll include those in a follow-up email if you want to share them out with everybody too.
Yes, that would be great. If you get those to me by tomorrow,
Yeah.
I'll be sending out the link to the recording,
Okay.
a link to the evaluation for ISB credit, and any handouts. The people who registered for the webinar but couldn't attend today, they might want to get those as well. So I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you, Andrea.
Sure thing.
All right, I don't see, let me see, a Q&A popped up. Oh, I got a question in Q&A saying, can we send the PowerPoint slides? I'll leave that up to you, Andrea, if you want to include them as a PDF.
Yeah.
Or if you'd rather just stick with the resources, it's totally up to you.
Sure. Usually we have this as a sort of cleaned up version of PDF slides to send over. So Arlen, we can definitely get that over to you as well, along with the downloadable resources.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm also going to say we have an amazing blog. So visit our website, go to our blog and register for our newsletter, and you'll get you'll get our Huddle newsletter where we give you all kinds of things to have on your radar, ways to talk to students about these topics. So definitely recommend that y'all check that out. And if there's something trending, you can better believe that we are covering it in our blog and our info. So
All right, appreciate everyone's time this afternoon. You are free to hover down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and leave the meeting room. That will log you out of the session. Let us know you're all done. I will stop the recording.